Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today we're going to be looking at the Adeptus Sororitas Codex. Now, we have a limited edition one because we got the box set kindly from Games Workshop to have a look at and review for you guys, so you know what we think and what this sort of army works as. So, very interesting in this one. This is obviously a codex that many people have been asking for. Obviously releasing a beta codex, which I thought was a very interesting but good idea in chapter approved last year. And I like to think that has influenced a lot of the rules, certainly with the Acts of Faith, because that has now gone through, I think its third iteration, from the index version, the beta one, to this one, so there are official rules in this. And secondly, you know, the community making jokes and stuff on Plastic Sisters when they're coming, well, here they are. It's happening. And you know what, I'm pretty glad to see it happen because some of the models are absolutely fantastic. So we're going to go over the rules as such when you see them in the codex. I'm not going to cover lore wise because, I mean, like, I could cover lore, but I really want to get the rules out as soon as possible so you can, and obviously review them and give you an informed decision on them. So I'm not going to cover the lore, but you know, there might be time for that if people really wanted it. But I'm going to cover the rules in a bit more detail. So how I do this, I'm going to cover pretty much the faction rules, which are like, you know, the standard rules that affect all of them to begin with. Then I'll go into sort of key units throughout the codex, discuss them in a bit of detail. I will then go on to the order convictions, which is like your legion rules, the different ones you get on there and how they affect it. We then have stratagems, I'll go into a bit more detail, warlord traits and relics. And hopefully then you'll get a bit more of an idea when it comes to the Adeptus Sororitas book. So, in terms of, let's start with faction rules. We'll start with Acts of Faith and Miracle Dice. So I cannot remember the Act of Faith iteration beforehand in detail. I mean, I covered the beta codex when it first released back in December 2018. And overall, I found it very lackluster and the abilities not being great. You know, you had multiple ones to choose from, but they were lackluster, and because you had to roll to see if they actually worked, they were not reliable either. So not a good combination there when you have lackluster and unreliable. I think that the miracle dice is a lot more useful and a bit more interesting. Having to, you know, a steady flow of dice with at least one per battle round is good. But another way to steadily get them is that you can do Vengeance, which is a unit from your army with Acts of Faith ability, destroys an enemy unit. That'll give you another one as well. Essentially, every time you destroy a unit, you get a dice from it as well, which can be very, very nice. Other ways to do it, such as Sacrifice, which is not ideal, Purity and Valor, they're a bit more trickier to pull off, and certainly you'll probably get the majority of your miracle dice from the beginning of the battle round and also from Vengeance. There are plenty of other ways to generate dice through the codex, through stratagems, character abilities, etc, etc, etc. So this is not exclusive the only way, and if you really do want to pile on loads of dice that you can possibly use, there is plenty of ways to do so. Now these are a lot more, as you can tell by having these dice, they're a lot more dependable than the rules before. They are simpler, which I'm pretty sure, you know, is pretty good, and I believe they actually stole this mechanic from Age of Sigmar. I think it was with like Tzeentch that they stole this idea, and I think they're quite happy to admit that. But it does work quite well. The ability to have stacked dice and apply it to roll is very, very powerful. I can see this being predominantly used in charge rolls, because there's always an occasion where one of the dice is wrong and you're like, I need to re-roll it, I just need a 3 to get it. But if you've got one stacked away, that's kind of handy as well, and then you just need to roll one dice, which can help. It's just really if you needed like a 6 and you're like, well, stacked dice, I've made it, no problem. And that can help there as well. So that's quite good. Armor, basically use it in saving throws. That is, I believe, both your armor save and invul save. I don't know if that would count for things like your feel no pain. You know, we don't really call it feel no pain, but I don't think they count as saving throws. I would need to check FAQs and wording on that one, but saving throws would cover armor saves and invul saves, so you can use it there, and I think that'll be hugely beneficial when, if something hits one of your characters horrendously bad and you need to make an invul save, you can just use stacked dice and you can fast it. And the last one I think is going to be really, really good is you can use it for damage rolls. You can use it for a lot of things, advanced charge, deny witch, etc, etc. There's quite a few options there, but I think these are the key ones, and I think damage is going to be a fun one because your opponent has already done their saving throw. So you could then use the damage, you could use it on the damage roll and then be like, well, you know, you need to make this save because I've got a stacked 6 back there and I'll just cause 6 damage straight off the bat, and you have to save this, so you could force your opponent to have to re-roll. Maybe it's like, you know, a 5-up or 6-up save, which many people are like, I'll just let it go and see what your damage is. But you can be like, well, I'm going to cause 6 damage, it's going to happen, and force your opponent to re-roll. And I love those psychological tricks you can do. So having those sort of stacked dice, if they are high, can really play with how you're going to work with your opponent. But it just gives you a lot more reliability in some of your rolls. And I really like that as a mechanic. So I think it works quite well, because it's like an act of faith, you know, we've got faith that we're going to do it. It kind of makes sense, and I just think generally it's a lot more competitive, a lot more reliable, and a lot more useful. So I can hardly complain with that. Shield of Faith is models get a 6-up invul. In addition, one of the models in the unit can resist psychic powers, like Deny the Witch, but you only use 1d6. Yeah, so I think the previous iteration maybe slightly changed, but I'm not 100% sure on that. A 6-up invul is nothing to write home about there. It's a nice extra protection, but ultimately not excellent. Most things with this ability, Shield of Faith, have a 3-up invul anyway, so really need to be -4 AP or ignore armor for it to actually be effective. And the Deny a Witch thing is hard to pull off, but then again, you're getting so many units with this that if your opponent does roll a 4 or 5 and it works, you can just be like Deny the Witch with whatever one. And you have plenty of options in that. And if you do succeed, I think get a miracle dice. I can understand why they didn't make it 2d6, because then you'd just be having all the Deny the Witches in the world. And there is a way to augment this and make it a lot easier to succeed. But I can see why they kept it to 1d6. And if you want to make it better, you can do so and make yourself more reliable to Deny the Witch if you want. We've then got Zealot, which I think is arguably more useful than Shield of Faith. Shield of Faith is more, I think, for the sister models for them, while the Zealot is more the sort of the Ministorum ones, the more sort of the priests, etc. And Zealot is when resolving an attack made with melee weapons by a model in this unit, you can reroll hit rolls if that unit made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention. Really, really good, because those units generally are all close combat units. So if they're going to charge or be charged, they want to get those reroll hits, hit more reliably and do damage. I think that one's a bit more better than the Shield of Faith. Next up we have Sacred Rites, and I'm very excited to speak about this one. Lastly we have Sacred Rites, and I'm likely this is again the trend of GW that's quite new, giving extra rules if you do not soup, if you don't, you know, take the Imperium keyword and take various units from various codexes. If every unit in your army has the Adeptus Sororitas and or Adeptus Ministorum faction keyword, this unit gains an ability depending on which Sacred Rite is active for your army. So it's really looking at these sort of soup rules and going, look, we're going to reward you further if you don't take, you know, other forces you could take in the keywords. You will get an extra ability for doing so. And I'm really excited to see how they expand on this, because I don't like soup armies. I prefer just keeping 2. You know, I'm predominantly Chaos, so I prefer to keep it like, if I'm going to go Chaos Space Marines, it's going to be all Chaos Space Marines. And I'm very interested to see how they reward people, you know, Chaos forces, Eldari forces for this in the future, to try and keep them to sort of one faction. And that would be really, really handy. I think, well, I think you could probably count that. I think Shock Assault and everything might be that for Space Marines. But either way, and Chaos Space Marines have sort of similar thing. But it's interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see what they do for non, you know, soup ones like Necrons or Orcs, etc. You know, but that's going into on our side on that one. We want to have a look at the Sisters one, because if they don't take any Space Marines or any Astra Militarum allies, then they do get extra abilities, and these are the Sacred Rites. Sacred Rites work by determine which Sacred Rite is active for all units from your army with ability at the start of the battle. To do so after deployment, but before the first battle begins, select one Sacred Rite from the following table to be active. Alternatively, you can roll 2d6 to randomly generate 2 Sacred Rites to be active. A duplicate result has no additional effect, but is considered to be active for the purpose of Battle Rite Stratagem. In either case, Sacred Rites are active until the end of the battle. So, you've got D6 abilities, you can choose which one you want, which I think most people are going to just choose the one they want so they know they're reliable get it, but there may be some people who gamble with 2d6 and see what they get. But like Canticles in that way, but Canticles you have to do every turn, you lose the one you had last time. Generally I like this one better than Canticles, where you can go, right, cool, you can choose it and you get it for the battle, which would be handy for Canticles, or you could risk and get 2d6, go for the mystery box. So I like that, I think that's very good. These abilities, I'll say them very, very quickly. Hands of the Emperor, when a unit with a Sacred Rite advances, add 1 to the advance roll. When they make a charge roll with Sacred Rite, add 1 to the result. Not ideal, it's okay. Spirit of the Martyr, when a model with Sacred Rite is destroyed, roll a d6 before removing the model from the play. On a 5 up, that model can either shoot with one of its ranged weapons, as if for the shooting phase, or make one attack with one of its melee weapons if it was the fight phase. If model has damage table, use the bottom row of the table for shooting with ranged weapons, etc. That one might be not bad, 5 up. I think the standard, Space Marines have standard that do the same thing. That one's not bad, I think that's okay. Aegis of the Emperor, when Deny the Witch test is taken for a unit with this Sacred Rite, add 3 to the total. So this is when you do your Shield of Faith, you only get 1d6, but you automatically start with a 3 and then you add d6 to it. And that's when you're probably more reliable to Deny the Witch. If you're facing Zinj Demons, Thousand Suns, Grey Knights, then you might want to think, I want to be more reliable to Deny the Witch. And certainly the Aegis of the Emperor gives you that ability. Divine Guidance, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by a model with Sacred Rite, on an unmodified roll of 6, the armor penetration characteristic of that weapon is improved by 1 for attack, e.g. a 0 becomes -1. So I think that one's a really good one, especially for throwing out a lot of dice. When you roll that unmodified roll of 6 and you're getting extra AP, it's going to make a difference every once in a while. So I think that one, if you're throwing out plenty of dice and ranged, that will be a really good one to go for. The Passion, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model with this Sacred Rite, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional hit. Again, if you're more melee orientated, that one's pretty good. And Live the Emperor, when a morale test taken for a unit with Sacred Rite, you can reroll the dice. I think that one's meh, not so great. I think it'll be good if you maybe want to try and get miracle dice, you can reroll to try and get the miracle dice. Obviously if you roll 1, that's ideal. But generally, I think there's a good lot of abilities there. Depending on your playstyle, you might like them. And I think they're quite good. Now, there is stratagems and things that can change them mid-battlefield, so you may not be, I think the one that's mentioned here is Battle Right Stratagem. I think that, you can change them later on, and that's really good that you do have that option. Generally, I like this chart, and I like how it does give you good different abilities to work if you don't take allies. And I like them getting rewarded for that, so that's good. So with that, let's go into the units then. I'm really liking some of the Adeptus Sororitas units in terms of looks and things. I was a bit worried that previously, I think I said in my beta Codex rule, I thought there was just far too few units, especially on the actual sister side. Now there are a fair few there. They've buffed that out, especially with elites. Now they have included many sort of single character models that are elite choices similar to the Death Guard Codex, and I don't like that very much. I think these supportive characters are okay, but generally they're not great. There might be some good combinations for there, but they have expanded other units as well to give you more options, which is kind of cool. I thought as well that they might include the Blackstone Fortress, especially the expansion, has units that I think work really, really well with this codex. I think there's like priests and there's a crusader and character in there, and they're not in the codex, which I think is a bit messy. Maybe it's because they're not going to keep those models out for print forever. I'm only speculating on that one. So if they are good characters and they work well, I would suggest buying Blackstone Fortress. I think it's the escalation one, and I would need to check. I've not bought it myself, but if we end up doing Adeptus Sororitas, then I'd probably say it's a good investment. Adds characters, and adding characters can't be bad, because usually they have good buffs that help, especially the characters in this book. So let's have a look at the HQ choices here. Interesting one here, a little bit light if you ask me. There is 2 general choices, and then there's 3 named character choices. Though only one of them actually kept in order. So your orders are obviously, like your Legion traits. 2 of the special characters, I believe, can just be taken with any order, and that's quite good. It's not like if you go, Imperial Fists, and you can't take half, 90% of special characters because they're with other legions. There's 3 characters, only one of them is held behind an order. So that's kind of good. That's kind of useful on there. So we'll start with obviously the Canoness, which is your sort of captain equivalent. Pretty standard, strong stats for character, though only strength 3 and toughness 3. She can have a number of upgrades, which none of them are all too awesome. They're a bit situational, But there is the Rod of the Office, which makes your 6-inch reroll 1s to hit ability for order units extend to 9 inches, so it gives you a bigger range for that, which is nice. The Blessed Blade is actually a pretty good weapon though. It's a melee weapon, it's +2 strength, -3 AP and D3 damage. So it's making strength 5, -3 AP and D3 damage. That does make her far more competitive in combat. So that is quite nice. The only thing is, obviously, I believe she can't have a jump pack. And really when you want combat characters, you want to have a jump pack or some kind of speed. So that does hurt her a wee bit in that sense. We then will go with the second sort of general one, which will be the Missionary. Now the Missionary is your sort of priest equivalent, your priest HQ, and nothing to write home around here except for he adds an extra attack to Ministorum infantry and Astra Militarum infantry in an aura effect. Basically, an extra attack with every is it unit or friendly models within this ability, so 6 inches they get an extra attack. But generally, because they've got chainsword, they're not really that great themselves. Also, if your army's Battleforged, no more than 1 missionary can be taken in any detachment, so you can't make a whole detachment of them if you wish, and that is not so ideal. They also stop people fleeing as well, which is fine. But where this Codex does shine when it comes to HQs, you know, the canisters are fine, is their characters. Now, their characters, you have 3 here. You have Celestine, you have the Triumph of St. Catherine, and you have Junith Erudita. I'm going to butcher that pronunciation, but I'll try my best. So we'll go with them with Celestine. You know her and you love her. Moves fast, hits hard, and she comes back to life. She is a stunning model and a real pain. She's got a good warlord trait, which we'll go into later. And generally, I can see her being used in if you're using Adeptus Sororitas, Celestine just adds a very fast character who hits like a ton of bricks, means 6 attacks. Melee weapon is strength 7. I mean, she can choose her targets and choose well, and if she dies, she can come back. And that is a really scary thing to see. We then have Junith Erudita, which is the new Flying Pulpit of Doom model, which I think is really cool. She's more represents upgraded Canoness. She does not hit particularly hard. Her Mace of Castigation is +2 strength, -1 AP and 2 damage. So essentially strength 5, which is not bad, but -1 AP is a little bit weak. 2 damage is okay. But where she does shine is that she does have 2 heavy flamers, which is really, really nice. She has the fly keyword, so if you do charge her, she'll heavy flame you, then she can jump back and flame again, which is really, really nice. But she also has Fiery Conviction, which allows her to reroll hit rolls of 1 and wound rolls of 1 for attacks by models in friendly Order of the Martyred Lady units whilst they're within 6 inches of this model. So reroll hit rolls and wound rolls is a very, very powerful ability. Anything that's reroll wounds is generally very, very good. So I can see her being very efficient on the backfield, just sort of sitting there inspiring the units in the backfield, and then if people do charge, she can come in, flame away, do a lot of damage with flames, and if she needs to get into combat, she can as well. She also improves the invuln save of units, I think Adeptus Sororitas models that receive the Shield of Faith around her by 1 up to a maximum of 4. I think that St. Celestine does the same as well in a way. She improves them by 1, a Gemini get a better 1, etc, etc. So they do improve the sort of shield ability from a 6 to a 5 up to maximum of 4. And that's not bad, but again, once you get to 4, that's when it really begins to kick off. 5 is okay, 6 I don't really rate. And lastly, we have the Triumph of St. Catherine. I don't know, I didn't know anything about this. I don't know if this was in the previous Codex. I don't believe it was. I think this is brand new. And I couldn't see any models of it either. But from what is described as is a shrine to, I think, a previous saint. It's got, I think, her bones and things in it. And it's got basically followers around it as well. So I'm thinking very much like the old Bretonia, sort of the hold a Grail Knight up, and that's kind of how it works. Just to explain how this one is in terms of stats, it's weapon skill and ballistic skill 3+, strength 3, toughness 3, 18 wounds, okay, 14 attacks at peak efficiency, 8 attacks at lower, 6 at lower, and then the relic abilities it has goes from 5, 2 to 1 as efficiency, which is very odd. 4 of the attacks can be done with the Martyred Blade, Martyred Sword, which is +3 strength, minus 3 AP, 2 damage, and then the rest of the attacks can be plus 2 strength, minus 1 AP, 1 damage. Weird, right? So it has 4 up invul, and when you do target it for an attack, it's minus 1 to it, which will give it more survivability. After all, it is only toughness 3. It has a bunch of other abilities, but we're going to have a look at these relic abilities, because the relic abilities are the sort of what's the selling point to it. So what have we got here? One is essentially, I think you get an ability to get an extra relic dice. Each relic grants its model, blah blah blah. Yeah, Sense of the Sacred Rose at the start of each turn, gain 1 miracle dice. So start of each turn, now that is both your turn and your opponent's turn. So that's 2 per battle round extra. That's really, really good. So even if you're down to low wounds, Sensor of the Sacred Rose is probably one you go for there. Number 2 is at the start of your shooting phase, roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches of this model. Add 1 to the result if they are a Psyker, and add 1 to the result if they are a Chaos unit. On a 5+, they suffer d3 mortal wounds, so if you are in about your opponent, that's a good way to get mortal wounds, and especially if they're Chaos unit Psyker, because I assume it stacks. It's going to be d3 mortal wounds and a 3 up, and that's going to hurt. So, kind of handy there. Yeah, it's not bad. 3 is Petals of the Bloody Rose. Add 1 hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by models in a friendly Adeptus Sororitas unit, while within 6 inches of this model. Reroll, add 1 hit rolls, so it just means your hits are reliable more in melee, which is okay, but it's only Adeptus Sororitas units, not so much the Ecclesiarchy or the wrong term maybe, maybe the priest ones. I don't think they would benefit from it. So okay on that one. I'd prefer if it was shooting, it'd be crazy. Icon of the Valorous Heart. Once per battle, you can perform an Act of Faith for a friendly unit within 6 inches that has an Act of Faith ability, even if they have already performed 1 or more Acts of Faith. So you can only do Act of Faith once, you know, with a unit per maybe turn of battle round. I should really check that one. That's terrible. I haven't. Yeah, before it rolled 1 dice. Yeah, for each individual. Yeah. 1 soul miracle dice. Substitute, remove the miracle dice. Yeah. So, you know, it just allows you to get another miracle dice roll on a unit when you may not be eligible to. So that's handy, but I don't think it's going to be the most handy. Maybe if you were, you know, you had, you know, your big backfield missile launching units, then you want to try and augment a lot of their damage rolls, and you could do multiple at a time. That might work as well, but ultimately I don't think that's one of the best. Simakarum of the Ancient Argent Shroud. When you perform an Act of Faith for a friendly unit whilst within 6 inches of the model, you can increase or decrease the value of the miracle dice by 1 before using it to a maximum of 6 and a minimum of 1. This is not cumulative with any other ability that can increase or decrease the value of the miracle dice. You know, it's a bit like Call's ability to affect the Canticle's roll. This allows you to affect the miracle roll. Okay. Not bad. I think that was probably the weakest, but though actually the one that's most in points, mainly because it's 18 wounds and it's targetable, toughness 3, there's a good few defensive abilities, but when it comes down to them, I think Celestine is really going to be the main heavy hitter. I'd be surprised if we didn't see quite a few Celestines. Rocket, at one point in the early edition of the game, we did, because she was just so good, and it'll be very interesting to see if she does appear again, and I hope she does, because it's an absolute stunning model. Troops, there is only 1, and it is of course the Battle Sister Squad. There's, you know, they are cheap at 9 points, but they have a few options on them to upgrade them. A troop choice in Essential that is a minimum of 45 points is nothing to complain about, especially with Bliss Scale 3, 3 up armor save and a bolt gun. I can't really complain with that. That's a very, very cheap amount of points. Hell, I think Custodes, when you take a single Custodian model, is more points than the entire squads, and for you to fill the troop choice of minimum battalion, you need at least 9. So it's like 3 times the cost of them to get the battalion. Now, of course, Custodes do hit pretty darn harder, but it's 3 times the cost to get the minimum of the battalion, and even then, we're not even taking HQs into consideration either. Elites now, like Genestealer cults, elites are probably where the most choices are. There's I think 12 in total, and that's nearly more than the rest of the Codex kinda combined. I think there's like 15 to 18 other choices for the rest of the Codex, so elites is where you see, and I'll just speak about the ones that really kinda stood out to me. So we have the Zephyrim squad. Now Zephyrim squad are essentially, I remember the sort of flying Adeptus Sororitas, but they're all armed with bolt pistol and power swords. So they are their separate unit, they're not fast attack, they are elites. So this is a jump pack squad, but designed with combat in mind, armed bolt pistol and power sword. Usually units like this do not work. Come out of deep strike, fail the charge, shoot shot crap, and worse still, they are only 3 strength. So that's a bit of a problem, you know, they could get shot, they are, you know, they come out deep strike, they get shot, and they're only 3 strength. And power swords. So there is things that do make them good. One, they are movement 12, so super fast, what you'd expect from jump pack. 2 attacks piece with 3 on the Zephyr Superior. Wow, I'm pretty sure Assault Marines are a bit insulted by that. They wish they could be 2 attacks piece at minimum. But their abilities is what really sells them. They've got Rupturous Blow. When resolving attack with a melee weapon made by a model in this unit, you can reroll the wound roll. If it was wound rolls of 1, I'd be like, that's mediocre, but it's all wound rolls. And not even if they charge, it's when they charge. That really sells the power swords a lot more. You're going to be wounding most things unless it's like toughness 6 on 5s. So being able to reroll all the wounds is kind of nice in there, and there is many different augment abilities in there. And they also have the Zephyr Penitent. You can reroll charge rolls made for order units while they're within 6 inches of a friendly unit with a Zephyr Penitent when the roll is made. So that allows you to get more reliable charges in general for all your units nearby, but mainly this unit because that's kind of what you want. You can only get the Penitent if your leader, the Seraphim, doesn't upgrade the bolt pistol. If they keep the bolt pistol, they can have the Penitent, but if they take the, I think it's a plasma pistol, they can't, which is a real pain. Well, it's not really, but I just think that combination of rules is really good. I think many forces would wish that they could deep strike in, and they would get reroll wounds, and they'd get reroll charge. That's, I mean, I'm pretty sure many people spend command points in that, so that's really good. They also, and they're quite cheap as well. I think overall Zephyr squads, if you give me a wee second. Zephyr squad, they are 13 points a piece plus power sword 4, so you're looking at 17 points a model. And I think that can add up to a wee deadly unit. But also their invul save is improved by 1 for their Shield of Faith up to 4+, so they automatically have a 5-up invul as well, which is very handy. Other ones that sort of impressed me as well is Crusaders. Now Crusaders are, of course, the Adeptus Ministorum, Astra Militarum sort of thing. Now they are relatively weak, but they're also very cheap, and they have a Storm Shield for 3-up invul. So you can take them in small squads, set them in places, and generally just, you know, use them as battlefield campers. Just watch out for kill points, because your opponent will rack them up if they start targeting them. We also have the Arco-Flagellants, which are those crazy guys with all the sort of whips and things. And yeah, they're pretty good as well. 7-inch movement, 2 attacks piece, 2 wounds. They have a 7+ save, so they've got to be covered to even get a 6+. But the Arco Flails add +1 strength, -1 AP, 1 damage. So strength 5, -1 AP, but make D3 hit rolls for each attack with this weapon instead of 1. So each of them can do possibly 6 attacks, with the leader maybe even doing 9, which can be quite terrifying. They've got Zealot, so when on the first round of combat, minus consolidation, they're going to get reroll hits. And they've got a 5-up Feel No Pain, which keeps them in the game a little bit longer. So I can see them being quite good. Don't know if they're cheap. Arco-Flagellants, 13 points. And I imagine the Arco-Flails are free. And they're free, so 13 points a model. So that's not too bad for a unit that essentially, if they meet a horde unit, they could really tear the heart out of them. So I think that's quite interesting. Light guns such as bolters, held toughness 3, blast guns are really going to fry them, but generally not bad. You know, I think they're pretty good for their points. Fast attack, we're going to go with the Seraphim squads, your quick range unit for Sororitas. They're extremely cheap for a unit with fly. I think they work out to be, you know, they've 12-inch movement, and they're only about 2 points more than a basic sister. I think they're only 11 points. With hand flamers, I think they're only an extra point, is very cheap. They won't change the battle without buffs, but they are extremely fast with 3-up armor save, and I just think fast units, 3-up armor save that are cheap, have a huge amount of utility on the battlefield. I believe they also have their 5-up save, invul save as well. So that makes them, for such a cheap unit, kind of interesting. So I'm intrigued to see how people use them. Then we get to the Heavy Spore, which has a fair few additions in this one as well. So we have the Exorcist, which is the sort of chaplain organ, you know, church-like rhino with missiles in the back. Essentially, those organs are missile launchers out of them. And I know many people are like, David's already got it, he's like, it's a little bit too much for me. But I personally really like it. I like the ornate style to it. If sisters are going to be about the ecclesiarchy and they're going to be about this sort of religious zealotry, this kind of makes sense. It's awesome. And generally the rules for it are actually pretty darn good as well. So it's kind of standard in terms of toughness. It's toughness 8? No, I didn't read that. It's toughness 8, so that really makes it a bit more harder to take out. 12 wounds, and it has bliss skill 3, 4, 5 as it loses wounds. But in terms of the weapons, special rules are kind of same old, explode, smoke launcher and standard sister rules. There's weapons, there's 2 different types of rockets you can give it. So you have the Exorcist Conflagration rockets, which are heavy 3d6, strength 5, minus 2 AP, 1 damage, so really designed to damage maybe things that are far away, because it's 48 inches, you know, single wound infantry models. This will do well. And then we have the Exorcist Missile Launcher, which is 3d3, 48 inches, strength 8, minus 3 AP, d6 damage. 3d3 shots is good. Now, generally I'd probably go with the Exorcist Missile Launcher because we don't have many far range anti-heavy models in this, so Exorcist I think would be quite good in the backfield. But 3d3 strength 8, minus 3 AP, d6 damage, I mean that's minimum 3 shots, maximum of 9. Could be pretty good. It is a wee bit expensive. I think it comes out when fully kitted out with more expensive options, about 160 points, maybe the heavy bolter adds on to it as well. But it is generally, yep, give me a second, 90 points plus the Exorcist Missile Launcher, 70 points, 160, plus the heavy bolter, which I imagine is about 10 points. So it's going to be 170 points, but it'll hit hard. You just got to make sure you do protect it, and it'll probably do quite well. We've also got the Mortifiers and the Penitent Engines. Now, the Mortifiers are a bit like the Penitent Engines. In fact, they're designed to be the same, but I think they are actually a sister who's ran from battle, more like an Arc Flagellant that is ran, and then they were like, nope, you're going straight into this machine. So it's, you know, they go into them, it's punishments for them. And they don't get the Order keyword, which is a bit of a pain, but they do get Adeptus Sororitas. And they've got a few interesting abilities in it, but I still think the Penitent Machine is better. Simply because although the Mortifier hits on 3s in both weapon skill and ballistic skill, the Penitent Engine hits on 4s with its weapon skill, but it does have Zealot, so usually in the first round of combat it's going to reroll hits, which makes it, I think, rather than taking 3 up to 4+, makes it a bit more reliable. They both have a 4-up save, except for you can upgrade, I think, one of the Mortifiers to an ankle right, which makes a 3-up save, but the Penitent Engine has the 5-up Feel No Pain, while the Mortifiers only have a 6-up. So there is a few different abilities in that one as well. The Mortifiers do have more abilities, but I believe the Penitents are also cheaper. Yeah, the Penitents are cheaper, they're only 28 points, but if you add in their 2 Heavy Flamers, they become a lot more expensive, because Heavy Flamers I think are 14 points each. He checks, yep, 14 points each, so it does add on a wee bit of points to that one. But I think the Penitent Engines are going to be a scary thing. You know, they'll fly down the field in squads of 3 and they'll just basically rip things apart. So I can really see the Penitent Engines still being quite solid there. And last, we do have a structure, we do have fortification, and that's the Battle Sanctum. It's a piece of terrain, infantry, beast swarm, things that fly can go inside it. But what it does is nothing too special, but it's kind of okay. Is at the start of each battle round, if there are an Adeptus Ministerium unit from your army within 6 inches of the Battle Sanctum, gain a miracle dice. So it's an easy way to get an extra miracle, I think it's 50 points, you get an extra miracle dice per battle round. So that's kind of good. There's also leadership buffs for the units and then leadership debuff for chaos, but I think it's just that extra miracle dice per turn. 50 points is not too bad. So that's kind of my thoughts when it comes to the units themselves. There's plenty of other ones in there. You've got your Immolator, you have the Retribution Squad, etc, etc, etc. But I think the key things to take away are the HQs. Now, I wish there was maybe a bit more. Be interested in that one. Penitent Engines are good. The flying units can be, stratagems on them can make them very good as well. But there's a lot of different things to go in there as well. And I found that quite good. And I'm very intrigued to see how they all combine together. Now, the next thing that's going to make them very interesting is, of course, orders. Now, order convictions are really aimed towards your Adeptus Sororitas units. And how they get extra abilities from it. Strength of Faith is your sort of standard troops, hold the ground, etc. We see it in every codex now. And then you've got to know that if you take any of the units such as Celestine, Gemini Superior, Hospitallers, Diologus, Mortifiers, Penitent Engines, Triumphant St. Catherine, or units of Ministerial Priests, etc., they don't affect the detachment, but they do not get the order. Because Celestine doesn't get orders because she is her own being, you know. So let's go into the actual orders themselves. So we've got the... I'm going to speak about all of them, or I'm just going to speak about the key ones. I think it's just going to be the key ones, keep this a bit shorter, yeah. So there's about 4 key ones I saw that are really good. Our Martyred Lady, the Blood of the Martyrs. Now this is Judith's one. Gain 1 miracle dice at the end of any phase other than morale phase, in which any units with this conviction were destroyed. So you get a miracle dice when you lose a unit as well, which is quite nice, only in 1 per phase. This in addition to any miracle dice gained at the end of the phase in which a character with this act of faith ability was destroyed. In addition, when resolving an attack made by models with this conviction, add 1 to hit rolls if 1 or more model from model's unit has been destroyed in battle, even if they were subsequently returned to the battlefield. That second part is okay because, you know, Battle Sisters and everything will appreciate it, but I think it would have been better on Arco-Flagellants. Now, I don't think they get it. Sister Repentia, I think, can do, because I think they've got order. Sister Repentia do. I didn't rate them as much, but it certainly does help if they lose 1 model, they get +1 to it to mitigate their -1. So I think that's quite powerful and do quite well in on itself. And what I would, let's have a look. Next one, our Martyred Lady. Next one is Blood Rose, quick to anger. When resolving an attack with oh yeah, this one's interesting. When resolving an attack with a melee weapon or a pistol weapon by a model with this conviction, that weapon's armor penetration characteristic is improved by 1 for that attack, e.g. AP 0 becomes AP -1. In addition, add 1 attack characteristic of a model with this conviction during a turn in which they made a charge move or charge performed a heroic intervention. So I can see this being really good with the Sisters with Power Swords, simply because, you know, it makes them AP -4, which may be a bit excessive, but still kind of handy. But they get extra attack as well when they're kind of doing charges, etc., which is really nice, giving 3 and 4 attacks respectively with Power Swords, and they get the reroll wounds and everything. So that'd be quite good. If that was on things like Orcs or Tyrannids, especially Orcs, because they've got pistols and loads of those attacks, this would be devastating. You do not want to give Orcs an extra -1 AP, so I'm glad they've got it. Glad Orcs don't, because that would have been crazy. We then have Argent Shrouds, which is deeds, not words. When a unit with this conviction advances, it can fire ranged weapons if it moved without advancing. Really good. I think this one's really solid. I absolutely hate the rules such as Black Legion ones, which is if you advance with a unit, their weapon becomes an Assault 1 weapon. An Assault weapon, and I just hate it. It removes the rapid fire ability, etc., and I think it's not ideal. I think this one is a lot more ideal. I mean, you could advance, still keep rapid firing, etc. And I think that's generally just a simple but solid rule, giving you a lot more speed, but still keeping a lot of your attacks. So yeah, really dig that one. And last is Sacred Rose, Devout Serenity. When a morale test is taken for a unit with this conviction, no more than 1 model can flee. In addition, you can perform an act of faith for a model or a unit with this conviction. Roll 1d6 on a 5+, you gain a miracle dice. In addition, when resolving Overwatch with a model from this conviction, you hit 5s, not 6s. So 3 rules there. Morale, not as effective. Overwatch, more effective. And you can get miracle dice back. Simple, but pretty good. Loads of buffs. Kind of good. So let's go into stratagems. Now they have loads of stratagems. They have 4 pages of stratagems, which I think is more than a lot of armies. But with things like Space Marines now getting more and more stratagems through supplements, etc., it kind of makes sense that we are now seeing a little bit more stratagems in the general codexes when they're not getting expanded on. So 4 pages of stratagems really does give them a huge amount of variety. I'll try and just speak about ones that are really, really good. So we have Battle Rites, which we mentioned before. 1 command point. Use the stratagem at the start of the battle round if your warlord has the Sacred Rites ability and is on the battlefield. Select 1 active Sacred Rite. On roll a d6, randomly generate a new Sacred Rite. You may reroll this result if the Sacred Rite is the same as the one that is currently active. The selected Sacred Rite is no longer active and the new Sacred Rite is active. You need to see how they want to do this one, because I think it's good that you can change the Sacred Rite as you need. But because it says it replaces the one that was generated, does that replace both of them if you randomly generated? Or does it only replace one of them? Part of me thinks it's saying, yeah, it's going to replace both, but when you read the secret rite part, it makes it sound like it's only one of them. So I'd like to see what they FAQ that. I'm hoping rules is intended, it's kind of just one of them, and then that allows you to choose for one command point, but we'll see what they say on there. We have Moment of Grace, one command point. Use the stratagem after making a hit or wound roll for an attack made by Adeptus Sororitas model from your army, or after making a saving roll for an Adeptus Sororitas model from your army. Discard 1 to 3 miracle dice and add 1 to the result of the roll for each miracle dice you discarded. So the advantage of that is that if you have, like, you know, rolls of miracle dice that are 1s and 2s, and they're not going to be very much help, this allows you to go, well, for one command point I can move that and add it to, say you fail an invul save, Celestine fails her invul, she gets a 3 not a 4, you can go, well, I'm going to spend a command point, I don't need to reroll, I'll just use that one miracle dice, the one that's just 1, and that'll automatically get me that pass. So there is times for that when it's going to be quite good. It's not huge because it does use up miracle dice by just adding 1 to the dice, but it's still not bad. Faith and Fury, where is that one? Here it is. 2 command points. Use the stratagem after you perform an act of faith for a hit roll. You can reuse the same miracle dice for a wound roll for that attack. So, if for instance you want to ensure that, you know, you've done a hit, you want to hit a target, you're like, I want to make sure I hit and I wound, and then you're going to have to try and save, maybe it's Celestine just carving through stuff or something, I don't know. But essentially you can go 2 command points, I'm going to spend that 6 to ensure the hit, the wound both go through, no problem. Maybe a bit expensive for 2 command points, but still very, very handy. We then have Martyrdom, 1 command point. Martyrdom, 1 command point. Use the stratagem at the end of the phase in which your warlord was destroyed if your warlord was an Adeptus Sororitas character. If your warlord is Celestine, perform any rolls for models miraculous intervention before using this stratagem. This stratagem may not be used if your warlord returns to the battlefield using the miraculous intervention ability or divine intervention stratagem. You gain D3 command points. So if your warlord is killed, not coming back, dead, done, you can bring them back through divine intervention if you want. Depending, it's only real canoness, none of the sort of special characters come back this way through the stratagem. But essentially when they die you can get D3 command points back, which is not bad. You know, it's just like spend 1 and you're either going to get 1 back and lose nothing, or get 2 extra, which is all very handy. Next up we have Suffer the Witch, which is use the stratagem at the start of the shooting or fight phase. Select 1 Adeptus Sororitas unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, when resolving an attack made by a module in that unit against a Psyker unit, you can reroll the wound rolls. Essentially if you see Magnus or Mortarion, you're going to be like, cool, this big unit I've got here, like they're going to just chuck wounds at them because I don't like them. So that can be very, very nice if you're taking down one of the demon primarchs. Next we have, I think, is a Devastation Reframe. Yep. 1 command point. Use the stratagem when an exorcist model from your army fires Overwatch or is chosen to shoot with. Until the end of the phase, you can reroll any roll of the dice rolled to determine the type of characteristic of the exorcist missile launcher or exorcist conflagration rocket that model is equipped with. So that's your sort of your big tank at the back with all the cannons and organs and stuff. And if you want, you know, it's 3d3 or 3d6, and if you're like, I'll spend a command point to allow me to reroll any of them, it means you are betting 1 dice that you may have to reroll 2 or 3. So very, very handy in that one. If you roll 3 6s and you're like, darn, well, never mind, but if you roll 1, you're going to be like, reroll that. If you roll 3 ones, reroll 1. So for 1 command point, I think that's okay, and I really, really like it. We then have Test of Faith. Use stratagem at the end of the phase in which you gained a miracle dice as a result of purity or valor, as described on page 75. Gain D3 miracle dice in addition to the one you normally gain, 1 command point. Purity and valor are the 2 more difficult ones. I think that's the one where you've got to deny the witch or pass pass morale tests with 1. So that's a bit more trickier to pull off, but 1 command point, you essentially have a potential of getting 4 miracle dice. So if you do end up in that situation, then definitely take Test of Faith. Purity of Faith. 1 command point. Use the stratagem when an enemy Psyker model manifests a psychic power within 24 inches of an Adeptus Sororitas unit from your army. After any deny the witch attempts, roll a d6 on a 4+, the psychic power is resisted. World Eaters did it first, guys, so yeah. But still handy to die a witch. Order of the Martyrs, this can be crazy good. That's my notes. Order of the Martyr. 1 command point, use a stratagem when an order of a martyred lady character from your army is destroyed as a result of the attack made by an enemy unit. Till the end of the battle, when resolving an attack made by a model in order martyred lady unit from your army against... So, until the end of the battle, when resolving an attack made by a model in an order of a martyred lady unit from your army attacks this enemy unit, reroll hit rolls of 1. Say, you know, Magnus comes in and absolutely stabs Judith to death, because I think she's in that one, or stabs a canoness from there. You go 1 command point, all my units are going to now reroll hit rolls of 1 against Magnus. Really good. I think that can be pretty darn good. Beacon of Faith, 1 command point, use this stratagem at the start of your shooting phase, select 1 Order of the Valorous Heart unit from your army. Till the end of the phase, when resolving an attack made by a model in that unit, ignore all hit modifiers, because Elder love to, so, you know, that's kind of going to be good. You know, you're going to be like, oh, Elder, they're going to do all their, you know, shenanigans of -1s to it. Well, Blind Faith can help you on that one as well. Also means that you don't get the benefits of your bonuses to it, but you don't get affected by enemies either. And lastly, the one to note is tear them down, 1 command point. Use the stratagem in the fight phase when an Order of the Bloody Rose unit from your army is chosen to fight with. To the end phase, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in that unit, add 1 to wound rolls. Always say that if you're got an ability to add to wound rolls or reroll wound rolls, it's much better than hit, because there's more ways to augment hits, and I just think affecting wound rolls is quite good. I think that's going to be good if you do take the flying sort of power sword ones. Adding that +1 to wound is going to be quite devastating. So that's the key stratagems I saw in there, and I think they're pretty good. Going into warlord traits, we have Righteous Rage. When making a charge roll for this warlord, you can reroll any or all dice. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by this warlord in a turn in which it made a charge or was charged performed heroic intervention, you can reroll the wound rolls. So that's very, very good. You know, if you are going to combat canoness, then Righteous Rage is going to be excellent. We also have Beacon of Faith, which is at the start of your turn. If this warlord is on the battlefield, you gain a miracle dice. This is Celestine's one, which she might be a warlord a few times, but it will add more miracle dice, which is always very, very handy. And we also have Terrible Knowledge, which is the Order of the Ebon Chalices one, Terrible Knowledge. If this warlord is on the battlefield, the miracle dice you gain at the start of the first battle round, which you get every time, is a 6. Every time. So you're guaranteed a 6 every time. That's very good. At the start of the first battle round, if your army is Battleforged, this warlord on the battlefield, you gain D3 command points. And a way to get command points as well. Absolutely awesome. Last but not least, we've got the relics. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 relics, which is really good, though not many of them I actually think are pretty useful, and I'm only going to say really one of them, because it's super useful. Litany of Faith, which is just a relic item you add, but once per turn, if a model from your army of this relic is on the battlefield, you can gain a miracle dice, you can re-roll that dice. So if you gain your miracle dice and you're like, don't like it, I rolled a 1, re-roll it. And I think that's going to be quite useful. There's many other different ones here as well, but none of them I went, you know, that one really, really caught my eye. Maybe I missed them, but that one really did, because it just allows you a more reliable way to get better miracle dice. So I can see that being quite a staple one to get. And that's kind of it for the Adeptus Sororitas. Hope to answer some of your questions there. If you've got any more, please put them in the comments. If we're allowed to discuss them, we absolutely will. But there's just a lot of cool things when it comes into the book. They have expanded it extensively. They've improved the Acts of Faith with miracle dice, I think, to an acceptable range. They have a range of combat, they have a range of midfield, they have a lot of cheap units, which allows them to be a bit more competitive on that side as well. After all, they're not quite an elite battle force. They are in a way because they've got the battle armour, but they're still quite very cost effective, which is very, very interesting to see as well. So yeah, I am a huge fan of it. I absolutely love some of the models, and they're fantastic. That one with the visor halfway up I think is beautiful. Can't wait to get my hands on it, see if I can maybe paint one of them up, and generally just see how the meta shifts. I've really enjoyed how the hobby in general have been joking for years that they've wanted plastic Adeptus Sororitas, and now that they're here, people seem quite happy, and I do hope that people are happy with the rules as well, Maybe there are things that would change, etc. Maybe there are things that augmented. Maybe the characters from Blackstone Fortress really helps. But generally, when you have things like 3 special characters, 2 of them which I believe are brand new, Saint Celestine being, iconic and really great, there's going to be some interesting ways to play. And I really want to see if people are going to use them just as a force on their own, or if they're going to use them in soup. And I hope to see them more force on their own, because they're really, really quite cool. And just generally, I want to see how people are planning to use them. So thanks again, guys. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe. Let us know what you think of Adeptus Sororitas. And check us out on social media to see our upcoming projects, where I'm still working away in Chaos. Been doing for quite a wee while, but many of them are coming to fruition. I'm going to learn how to do my sort of Demon Engine skin, hopefully soon. So a lot of them will be getting finished up, because I've got like 5 of them to finish, and they're almost there. And you can also check us out on Patreon to see, to help support the channel, bring you more content, because we absolutely love doing so. So thanks again, and we'll see you on another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.